Okay, and welcome everybody. Hello. I can see we've got people from all over the place. My name is Danielle Stein Fairhurst. I'm based in Sydney. I'm a financial modelling specialist, and I love running these sessions where I invite people who have special expertise, which I think is really useful for financial modelers. And today we are joined by Emery, who is an absolute powerhouse. And I've been following you on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, and I'm always incredibly inspired by your posts. So if you're not following Anne, be sure to do so. I'll pop her LinkedIn link in the chat in a moment. But she's based in Florida, but she's always running around all over the place, delivering workshops. I think we met very briefly in London earlier this year, and you were there last year as well, weren't you? Were you?
No, this was my first year.
Time. Okay, all right. So Anne has got 5 children, which is amazing, and they're quite young as well, aren't they? And I'm always quite fascinated by your treadmill. You always seem to be walking and working, which is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
And her specialization is data visualization, which she'll be talking about today, and specifically about presenting financial data, which is something that we can all certainly use some help with. So I'll pass over to Anne.
Great. Welcome, everybody. So tonight, Monday night for me in the United States, I'm actually joining you from Atlanta because tomorrow I get to give a client workshop about actually a totally different topic from from today. So this is my hotel room with the very flattering fluorescent lighting that we have here. Cool. So I'm so excited to talk to you about visualizing financial data because I do data viz and data storytelling all day long, and I love doing it in everyday tools like Excel. So even though at my core, I'm tool agnostic, Excel is what most of the government agencies, universities, hospitals, not-for-profits that I work with, they use Excel, and they're usually not data people. I get to work with some accountants and finance people here and there, but I'm mostly working with like the executive director who runs the nonprofit, or the federal government staff members who oversee all of the programming and the policy changes, or I'm working with the philanthropist who's about to give out a multi-million dollar grant and they want to know if their program is making a difference and if they're putting their dollars in the right place. So that's why I tend to use Excel for almost all my work, but I know I'm in, a good place with all my people tonight, with people also using Excel a lot. Okay, so speaking of Excel, let's take a peek in Excel. And Danielle, if you wouldn't mind putting this file in the chat for people, because then they can grab a copy too. I'm going to share with you all some like big ideas about the why behind like why the formatting matters. But then we're going to have hands-on practice time. So you can actually do some typing and practice yourself and ask questions. Okay, the first thing you need to know about like why we might visualize financial data is called the visual superiority effect or pictorial superiority effect. Those are synonyms. In all your spare time, Google those, learn all like the cool behind the scenes research for those. It basically goes like this. If you show people a bunch of words like the lorem ipsum that I've got here, or if you show them pictures like graphs, maps, diagrams, a literal picture like an illustration or a photograph. If you show people words or pictures, the research shows that we look at the pictures first. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Like if you see a really boring paragraph or a graph, your eyes naturally go to the graph, don't they? So we look at the pictures first. We look at the pictures longer. We spend more seconds or more minutes looking at the pictures, and we remember more from the pictures. So there's some like very obvious reasons for taking as much of our data as possible and turning it into pictures. But when it comes to the pictures, the formatting really can make or break it. I feel like it's like the devil is in the details with this. And this is where I love Excel, but Excel does need some extra like fine tuning and finessing when it comes to the formatting. A lot of the default charts kind of are not the best there, don't follow like the latest research on best practices and cognition and perception. So the basics of what you need to know about data viz. I'm giving you all this jargon today, aren't I? You're like the jargon webinar. Another jargony term is pre-attentive attributes. And those are the dozen or so characteristics that mean like when you see it, you just know. Like when you look at this one, you just see the bold words because some of the words, some of the letters are wider, thicker, bolder than the others. I don't have to tell you like, oh, do you notice that these words are bolder? No, of course not. Your brain in a split second, pre-conscious awareness, pre-attention, pre-conscious attention, before it even gets into your working memory and then long-term memory, you just see it and you know it's automatic. So what we have to do is make sure that we use these dozen or so pre-attentive attributes very, very purposefully so that we're emphasizing what matters in the data. One thing that I've seen, I'm 39 now, so I've been working for like, I don't know, 17, 18 years after university. Is that right? A while, long enough to know that the amount of data that I've seen organizations collect, it has exploded. I remember my first job after college, I asked my boss, like, hey, I need to do the annual report. Where's last year's data so I can compare and see like, did the numbers go up? Did they go down? What were the changes? And he gave me a key to a file cabinet. And he was like, the data's in the file cabinet in some other locked storage room down the hallway because we had collected data and questionnaires from people on paper. So I had to like enter it into Excel before I could do some formulas and pivot tables to like find any numbers at all. You know, that's just crazy to think like so much used to be on pen and paper not that long ago. And we just have more numbers than we can practically manage nowadays. You know, it's not really a challenge of, oh, like, how do we get the data? Nowadays, the groups I work with, and probably the groups you work with too, it's like, how do we make sense of all this data? It's a very different challenge in such a short amount of time. So, pre attentive attributes, when used correctly, like I'm going to teach you about, can help take all that data and help it feel really small so that people can
Yeah,
really
it's something
focus on just
I
what they
just think
need.
we don't generally do very well because as modelers, as finance people, all we care about is the numbers and the accuracy. And of course that's important. But getting your message across, like you're talking about, doesn't always come naturally.
I always say, I think it takes like two brains to do this.
Yeah, yeah, I
This
think,
is you tell me if you agree with this, Danielle, and everybody else. I think it takes two brains. One brain has to focus on the details,
mhm.
the accuracy, the decimal places, making sure all the formulas are correct, which I love doing. I love being in the spreadsheets, as I bet a bunch of you do too. And then the second brain has to be able to zoom out and see the forest. You know, one person's on tree level and leaf level and bark level, and one person is on like forest ecosystem level. So it can either be two people, like sometimes a coworker or a supervisor can play that like big picture role for you. Or if you plan your time really, really carefully, I think it could be your brain with enough time that's passed. Like if I start a project on a Monday and then I let it sit, and then maybe Friday, you know, if I'm lucky, like enough time has passed and I've done enough other stuff or like walked on my desk treadmill or played with my kids or something in the meantime, so I can step back and see that bigger picture. So I think it's impossible for any one person to do like
To see both
the
angles.
details and the big picture. Yeah, I think people put too much pressure on themselves to try to do it. And it's just, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Cool. Okay. Let's go through just another couple pre-attentive attributes. But again, I think these are super obvious when you see them. You're like, oh yeah, of course. Like,
yeah.
of course, bigger font size grabs our attention over smaller font sizes. So what that means is like, don't just smatter around font sizes just to decorate. Use them very carefully to focus people's eyes on what matters in the big picture patterns. Hue, different colors, that also is a pre-attentive attribute. This one's similar. Intensity. Intensity is when it's the same color, but it's a light dark variation. Okay, so like, do you see the difference? Hue is like red versus black. Intensity is like you're in the black family, the black hue. You either have more black, like true black, or less black, gray. Sometimes people get these kind of confused, or they mix and match them too much. They'll do like light blue with dark burgundy. And it's like, no, that's like too much going on. Just like one or the other at a time. Grouping is another one that really helps, not just for words, but also for our graphs and our tables. Grouping just means like, maybe I don't read Latin. I don't know what any of this means, obviously, but there's probably some grouping in there. There's probably some paragraphs. And just by starting new paragraphs, having blank rows, that helps, right? So like these are obvious things. There's more than just these. If you want, like go Google pre-attentive attributes, you'll find a dozen really helpful diagrams of people like showing these. I just wanted to create them for you just quickly in Excel. Okay, pre-attentive attributes are so powerful. Like, look, like the bold just stands out. The big font just stands out. Your brain sees it, it knows. So that means you only have to use a couple of them. You don't want to use all of them. That's where it can get too busy and kind of like backfire. So you have to use like just one at a time, very, very intentionally. So let me go through these super simple tables. We're pretending we're looking at like financial data across 4 quarters for thing A and thing B, right? Obviously made up example. This would be like a super busy, super. I see tables like this though in real life.
Oh,
Like
yeah, absolutely.
people are like, I'm gonna spruce it up. I'm gonna try to be like a graphic designer today, and they Google
Borders,
something and
no
they
borders, shading.
yeah yeah or there's like really bad templates online too. Like if you would Google like make a financial table, you'll probably see a template from like 1999 that looks like 1999. It's just like it's terrible. It might have cool formulas in it, but the design isn't helping anybody make sense of it. So I mean, I think you all can see the difference here, right? Where it's just like super busy, old school style. Like what do you even look at? There's so many colors and fonts and fills and lines everywhere versus like, oh, there's 2 categories. It's by quarters. I see some totals. I see some little sparklines showing some trends so I can see ups and downs. Oh, I see the totals. I can see the bars show the size of the total. Like it's just like super obvious
So
because
you just
of the
used
restraint.
some spark lines and some conditional formatting to create those little
Mhm.
charts. And I know they look like charts, but they're not really, are they? And the fact
Yeah.
that you
And
change the color to match the font to match it is something we don't always think to do.
mhm. Just so it's really obvious, like this goes with this,
Yeah.
which goes with this.
Mm,
I
that's
I
really
always
good.
hesitate on like, is it worth it making colored font? Because I do a lot of like accessibility and user experience work, making sure that everything is legible, like big A accessibility, like it meets our government's like official definitions, which vary a little bit country to country, but are actually like universally pretty similar in like how people can and can't read graphs.
Yeah.
And there's very specific rules for font colors. Um, so like a rule of thumb is like if you have colored text, well, let's just look at this, right? I'll zoom in a little bit more. I just wasn't sure with how many columns were in this table if somebody would instantly know, like, oh, like the bar chart is visualizing that. I wanted to make it super clear that like those go together. That's why
Mhm.
they're purposefully the same hue. But then when you make something a color, like this is my true brand color, which actually isn't dark enough for font colors. It works for graphs, but it's not dark enough for font. It doesn't pass like objective federal guidelines for
Oh,
font
really? So
readability. So I
it's
I just use
used
my
a
darker
theme.
one.
You've used a theme to get those colors to
Yeah.
change, right? And then
Yep.
how do you know what the accessibility guidelines are? Sorry if I'm getting it.
The US's one, no, ask all these questions. The US's one is webaim.org.
Mhm.
It's about web, like, internet web, accessibility standards, webaim.org, and then they have a color contrast checker where
Mhm.
you enter in the hex codes of the foreground, like the font color, and the background,
Yeah.
white,
It's funny,
and it'll tell you if it passes or fails.
we just scheduled a session for the Women in Financial Modeling group to talk about accessibility, which I think you might be interested in joining on that one. I think that's going to be, it's something I just don't always, you don't think about, like just because we can see
Yeah.
it properly doesn't mean everyone can. Mm.
Yeah. And we can talk about color blindness in this session too. Like I wish if I could wave my magic wand, I always joke like I've been self-employed for 10 years, but if I ever go get another like regular job again, it would be if Microsoft called me and said like, "Anne, help us make Excel better for charts." I'd be like, "Yes, let's do it." I would just remove all these red green ones
Yeah, why are they still there?
and actually all the multicolor ones too. Just because 1 in 12 men has color blindness, and this all looks like yellows to them. They don't see the red and green as distinct; they just see yellow. So I would just like remove those. I would just use this one, the one color scale. But
Yeah, yeah,
anyway, a good rule of thumb though, if you're going to color code your font, you have to make sure it's a dark enough brand color, and then it usually has to be bold. The webaim.org color contrast checker, like color calculator, it has rules where it says like, oh, this font color only passes if it's 14 and bold, or if it's at least size 18. So you learn right away like, oh, if it's colored font, make it bold. But I mean, I think you all can see that, right? Like
mm,
a little bit hard to read versus like easier, right?
yeah.
It's like when you see it, it's very much common sense. Okay. Sometimes when I show people before and afters like this, they're like, that's a lot of changes. Like I see that you made changes. Like I see that they look better, but I don't know where to start. Like what? So I would just want, I love time savers because like Danielle said, I have 5 kids, so I have 0 time. And my kids have been the best thing possible for time management because I had like A+ time management skills before kids, and now I have like A+++. I have fine-tuned my timing, and I love giving you quick wins. Okay, so quick wins would be like rounding. Rounding is a quick win.
That's yeah.
This is really difficult for like those of us behind the scenes in spreadsheets because we love specificity. So I always think about the decision makers on the top. What I want them to make a decision based on like a 0.01 versus a 0.02. Like, should a politician vote differently based on a 0.01 or 0.02? Like, usually not. Usually, I would never want somebody to make a real life, like a hiring decision, a firing decision, funding more things, funding less things, voting differently. Like, I wouldn't want somebody to make a real life decision based on a decimal place. So maybe behind the scenes, a couple of us might look at decimals just to make sure all of our formulas are correct or our pivot tables are correct. But when I share it with somebody, 9 times out of 10, I'm rounding. Okay, so that's great, right? You all probably know in Excel, there's multiple ways to round. I call this button visual rounding because, as you know, like if there was like a 0.01 up here, it keeps the exact number, it's just visually rounded. So it's a little bit easier to use. That's the one I probably use most often. I'm sure you all know that there's round, round up, round down. Like there's also formulas to do that. But I think the how-to for like this group, I think you know about rounding. I'm trying to just sell you on like,
But we do
yeah,
tend
let's
to
let's
get really
round.
hung up on the numbers of going like it's because sometimes it does actually make a difference, but you don't necessarily have to see it in the presentation.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's like the tables behind the scenes. If somebody asks a question, just in case, have your decimals, but by the time it would go into like a PDF or a PowerPoint for somebody else, round at that stage. Okay, borders. We're going to keep some borders, the gray horizontal borders, usually just on the inside. And this is just a pre-attentive attribute thing. It's like a game of where we use color contrast.
Mm.
You're going to know if you decluttered correctly if your table or graph passes the squint test. So squint your eyes at my screen so that everything gets a little blurry. You're kind of peering at the screen in between your eyelashes.
My glasses off.
And the one on the left, I just see a bunch of little boxes. Like
Mm.
I notice the borders. I've heard the joke that it's like looking at your data through a tennis racket because it's like, where are the numbers? Where are the patterns? I don't know. Like you have to stop and read every single number. Where the one on the right has just enough borders to help you read across, which of course we need. I'm not saying like obviously this one would be like what not to do, right? Like don't do no borders. Don't leave this webinar and be like, and Emery said to declutter my graph. Well, no, like not so that it's naked. Like it needs gray horizontal lines still. Okay, fills. I see fills a lot
Neil,
in like
Neil's just asking about the dollar signs. Is that what are you
mm,
that?
oh, whether you need them or not.
Yeah, yeah. So I can see you've left them on. What are your thoughts about that? Do you ever
That's a great
like,
point.
yeah, do you ever take them off and then put them in the title? I know some people
I think for
recommend.
you all, like in
Yeah,
accounting and finance roles, I think you could safely take them off because maybe your entire table would be about money, like it'd be the same unit. In my world, a lot of my projects have maybe one column of numbers, one column of percentages, one column of
yeah. So it's
dollars,
important
of
to make it
currency.
clear.
So I usually do label them just to like avoid any confusion. But I think for you all, I think you could safely
But
remove
I would say
the
if you took them
parentheses.
off, make sure they're in the heading to make it super
Yes.
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with headings, I would do like, you all know how you can make new lines like with Alt Enter,
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Where maybe this one's bolded because that's more important. And
Uh-huh.
then the dollar is like down below. I see a lot of people get headings that are just like
Yeah,
really
and
smushy. Like
merge.
even that
Don't
smushy.
merge the cells. Just do what you just. Yeah, no merge cells.
No, either separate lines, separate cells, or the same cell
Alt
with a little Alt
Alt
Enter.
enter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Um, I go through, these are just like regular tables, lowercase t tables that I typed in, but I think you all know that you can adjust the default settings for uppercase T tables and pivot tables. So on every client project, I go into my pivot tables and I just like make sure they don't have any of this stuff, make sure they don't have any like weird formatting. I just make it like a nice and simple pivot table template or Excel table template like this. A lot of times people keep the fills just because like that's what we've always done. It's been like that 10 or 20 years. But try the squint test. Like squint your eyes at these two tables. And the one on the left, don't you like just notice the headers?
Mm,
And the headers are kind of important, like medium importance. You need to know that they're headers. You need to know like what is in each column. But what we really want to focus on is the patterns in the data and the action items and the next steps. And like, is a number over or under what we budgeted or allocated? Like, those are the things we really want to focus on, not the headings.
mm.
So that's why I would argue like, save the colors for the graphs, not for the body of the table. Okay, I don't love banded rows. I just don't. I can't stand them. I think they make you dizzy. I feel like I took a psychology 101 course back in university days that talked about this and how it can like actually make you dizzy. So that's why I just do lines like this. If it's like a data set Excel table and I'm the only one looking at it, like whatever, but for the presentation version that you're sharing with somebody else, we've got to let go of this because it just looks like stripes. But it's like where are the patterns? Where's the what next based on the data? We're not seeing that. Bolding, I tend to go overboard with bolding, so I always have to like reel myself back in and like really think about like what really deserves to be bolded. It's typically just headings, sometimes a total. Sometimes I'll go overboard with like subtotals, especially pivot tables. You know how if you've like categories and subcategories and subcategories, and then it can bold too much for you too, and that can get too busy fast. A lot of times I see data people, technical people like all of us, go a little bit too crazy on font sizes because we're like, oh, I'm going to like be a graphic designer today and I'm going to look at this cool PowerPoint template or Canva template and has all these different font sizes. But sometimes it can get really messy or like Frankenstein, where it's just like a mix and match font size. So I would say just like size 11 or 12 font and you're good. I don't go below size 11 because everybody wears glasses or contacts nowadays, almost everybody. So I would never want somebody to have to like squint, obviously, to read my stuff. Okay, alignment. I
Mm.
see a lot of people center things just because they like it, but there is tons of research on speed reading, usually where they put like Sometimes they put like weights on your eyes to see where you look at the page. Sometimes they actually like time you to see how quickly you can understand or read things. And then they give you comprehension tests. There's all sorts of like PhD level peer reviewed research on this. And the research shows that numbers, you'd want to right align that also lines up the digits, right? Like the tenths place, the hundredths place, etc. And that words you would left align,
Mhm.
and then the headers would match the contents. So like if the words are left,
Okay.
this word is left.
Yep.
If the numbers are right, these numbers are right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know a lot of people here probably like the accounting format, like this one, which I'm not opposed to if your columns are wide enough. You know, as
Yeah.
long,
It just
well,
kind of
I don't
adds,
know.
just
No,
has the
maybe that makes it
focus
worse.
on the dollars. I never use that one, but it is kind of an accounting standard, of course, to have. Yeah, people are saying they hate it too. The standard of is to have it right aligned from accounting. But you probably know this, Anne. Have you ever, when you're using Power Query, if you take it into Power Query, one of your big tips that something is, because one of the big issues that you often have with Power Query is having numbers stored as text or the other way around. And your big tip is that if it looks like a number and it's left aligned, then it's going to be text and it's going to give you problems. So yeah.
That's a really, really good one to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah. Simon says yeah, he had a CFO who was very particular about this and he's never gone back. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You feel like you're getting
You're
you do feel like you're getting a bit overly particular. Like people have often said to me, "Who cares about the number? It doesn't matter, as long as the numbers are right. That's the most important thing." But this stuff does, people do notice it, and it does make a difference to your work.
Well, it makes a difference in like whether people even look at it. Like you have to have graphs, but for people to like, because if you show people a bunch of words or tables are just words, like they require reading versus a picture. The pictures are going to be looked at first for longer, and people are going to remember more from the pictures. So like we have to have graphs over tables. And then in the graphs and tables, we have to be so picky with what's emphasized because by using these pre-attentive attributes, like not all over the place, not like, oh, there's a dozen pre-attentive attributes, I'm going to use all of them in every single graph and every single table. Then it's like, it's a total mess. It like, where do you even look? It doesn't pass the squint test then.
Yeah, yeah. One
Um,
of the hard things is when you are reusing data over and over again, and then you've bolded something to make it stand out, but of course the numbers have changed, and so it no longer stands out. And so that's where conditional formatting comes into it.
yes, yes. All of these I just did by hand.
Yeah.
Like you've seen me today just clicking on these things, but yes, behind the scenes, I would absolutely recommend conditional formatting, adjusting your pivot table formatting,
Mm.
linked conditional formatting.
The key to
I did a Gantt chart recently that had like some helper cells off to the side so that if it was a category heading in the Gantt chart timeline, like it would be bolded and colored. So it was just like a couple layers of like things
mm.
behind the scenes.
And then
I think I have
testing.
that one on YouTube if
Yeah.
anybody wants to see it, but
Yeah, yeah. We're getting a few people raising their hands. We've got a few comments. So if you have any particular
yeah.
questions, pop them in the Q&A, or if it's just a comment, you can pop it in the comments. So Kalpesh is saying, one of my bugbears is that the positive and negatives are not aligning because of the brackets, which is a really good point. And you can't, yeah, that can be really annoying as well. And using saving your styles because it can take ages to get this custom formatting right, and then saving, creating a style or something so that you can recreate it. Because yeah, it can be quite fiddly.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, the negatives are an interesting piece of that. I always tell people that if you are an accountant, like all the accountants always use this one and don't fight with them. Like they're always going to use it. Don't try to change them, don't bother. But then the whole rest of the world, like the rest of like the 99% of the world prefers currency. So it just depends on, I would say not on our own preferences, but on our audience's preferences, like who we're giving it to.
I
So
know a
if you're
lot of
sharing it
accountants
with,
who don't like that. That for me, most of us are accountants, I think, and I don't.
yeah.
don't like that formatting either.
But if you're sharing it with your peers or your
Yeah.
boss who also has accounting skills or used to work as an accountant before he or she got promoted to a boss, great. Like make it super technical and do it the typical accounting style. But it's like, what if it's going to somebody else? It's like keeping their preferences in mind, and that their preferences might be different from ours behind the scenes, and that's okay.
Mm.
All right, just a couple more quick ones. Grouping. I used to get a lot of pushback on adding empty rows. Back in the days of printing, people were really hesitant, like, oh no, what if I have to use another piece of paper? Well, I mean, printing is happening less and less and less every day. So I use like when I do this is just a regular table, right? Where I just added in like fake numbers. But um, when I do this with pivot tables, I use the option to add blank rows in between groups, and audiences respond really well to that. You know, it's just like a one-click difference that takes one click worth of time for me behind the scenes, and it's so appreciated by the audience. Now, they are not going to say, if they're not Excel people, they are not going to say like, "Anne, I really like how you edited your pivot table to click on the design button or format button, whatever the button is, to like add blank rows." They're not
They
going to
don't
say that.
care how
What?
you got there. They just want the result.
No.
Mm.
And what they're going to say is, "This is the best analysis I've ever gotten."
Mhm.
Or, "Wow, like you're the best consultant we've ever hired. You actually understand us. This is the clearest graph we've ever seen." You know, "Oh, like we hired people in the past, we're canceling their contracts so we can work with you." That's the type of feedback you'll get just by doing little things like adding blank rows. Isn't that crazy? It's like the same numbers behind the scenes, but if you can't like see the numbers, then people can't use them for their businesses or their government agencies. Okay, and then the last one, or maybe there's one more, like hues, colors. Be careful not just to use them all over the place to decorate, but they're typically you want to use them to categorize. Or if you'd have something like anything that's bad is in red, you know, but that's still like a categorization. So not decoration, not just like random, very, very purposeful, deliberate use of colors. This one on the left has just like random colors. Even though I kind of personally like Microsoft's new colors, I'm the client of mine is not Microsoft. It's like so and so at the university, so and so at the state government agency. It's the city official who needs the data for an upcoming hearing, and they want to show the data on the slides to the community. So I use their branding, or in this case, it's like Anne Emery's Depict Data Studio branding, which yes, you can set up with themes. And I say themes are they're under here. They're under page layout in Excel. They're also in Word. They're also in PowerPoint. They're a work hard once technique. So you set them up like, here's some like, you can see like recent groups I've worked with. Like if I was making this this is a Hawaiian school district. If I was making this for like Kamehameha schools, actually their colors like would populate right here. Okay. So you set it up once and then it automatically shows up in PowerPoint and Word. There is a way to like save these and share them with coworkers too. You can also set up themes for fonts as well, so you can switch back and forth. So that should not take more than like 5 minutes to type in hex codes or RGB codes. All right. So when you add all these together, it goes from like really busy, old school, outdated to like, oh, really clear. But you have to declutter the table first so that when you add some graphs, like you actually have a chance to see them. Let's try the squint test on both of these. Okay, when you squint your eyes and you see the old school table on the left, what do you notice? Like what stands out first? The big blue rectangle, the column headers probably, maybe the red after that?
Mm.
Or the one on the right, don't the bars themselves stand out? Because that's the like largest, boldest, darkest. That has the most pre-attentive attributes. Maybe followed by the little trend lines, little spark lines next. I think you can also see that it's like category A and category B. You can see that there is a grouping to it too, right off the bat. All right. Well, I think you all have the Excel file. and
Yeah.
Danielle can post it in the chat a few more times if you need it. I
Yeah.
want to show you how to make some of these and format them. And we're not going to go through all 20. These are just my go-tos, like the quick stuff, right? It's like, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I've got 10 minutes. Let me add some quick visuals, which of course you can add like full charts. You can make complete dashboards. If we had even more time together, I would love to cover all of those charts with you. But tonight we're just focusing, well, morning for you. Today we're just focusing on the quick
Yeah,
stuff.
just one question.
Yeah.
So Neil's asking about the red, the red number for negative, and then Rachel's saying people associate red with unfavorable. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is so interesting. So I pre-COVID, I used to do almost exclusively on-site consulting and data viz workshops and like data analysis workshops.
Mm,
So I got to travel all over the world, right? Like my job's mostly virtual now, and it is highly cultural how people think about colors.
mm,
So Western cultures think about like blues and greens are good, red is bad. Typically, native cultures have the opposite, and Southeast Asia typically has the opposite. Like I spent 6 months living in Southeast Asia because I was training their UN staff and their embassy staff on data and data viz there. And I was saying like, oh, and like make sure you don't use red in your graphs because red means
very
bad. And they're
good.
like, we wear red at our weddings. We
Yeah.
wear red for university graduation. Like red is a beautiful celebratory color in a lot of cultures. So again, it's like thinking about your audience and what culture they grew up in. In the Native American tribes in the United States, I work with a lot of their public health agencies, and it's the opposite there too. They'll say like, "Oh, red, we make red beadwork for this ceremony, and we wear red dresses for this other ceremony." So like, red is bad, yes and no. Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
some cultures,
Yeah.
in my like
Yeah.
culture, yes.
Yeah, and I think it does really depend on the situation, by the sound
Yeah.
of it. Tim's saying I had a leader in the past that wanted the font color of monthly data to be red if it dropped or got worse by a certain percentage of the green of the previous month, and green if it increased or got better by a certain percentage from the previous month, because he liked it, but it was incredibly distracting for everyone
Yeah.
else. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. It would be more powerful instead of using font color to have a visual for that.
Mm,
So
yeah.
you could do something as simple as like add an extra column with
Mhm.
red dots or green
Yeah.
dots.
Yes, Neil saying maybe arrows, an extra column. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, like as I think you've alluded to, if the boss says to do it like that, then they're the client. That's how they want us. That's how they like to see it. Even though we don't think it's good practice,
Yeah.
sometimes you do just have to go.
Yeah. That's an interesting like human dynamic
Mm,
where like the customer's always right, but yes and no. Like you have to read between the lines when you get requests like that because maybe all they want to see is did things increase by a certain percentage or decrease by a certain percentage? And the first idea or the only thing they've ever been exposed to is like, oh, I want different font colors and I want red and green. Because like with stoplight coding, like of course that makes sense if you're not colorblind, right? Like, but a lot of people are colorblind. So I'll listen to those requests, but then I'm like, I'll show them 2 or 3 ideas and be like, hey, remember last week when we talked about like using red and green to denote the different like ups and downs? That is such a great idea. Like I took that idea and ran with it. And here's 2 or 3 different like options that I've got for you. You tell me which one's your favorite. And usually option one is exactly what they asked for, which is usually like not as good, right? Because they're not a data person. They haven't had the time to sit with it. They're just like, they're making a request, but I'm the specialist, as are all of you. And then maybe option two is a little bit better. And they always choose option three, the best one. Like once you lay them out together, it's so obvious for which one they pick. Um, I'm gosh, I wish we had like so many more hours. Whose question was it about the red and green?
Oh
The
yeah, we've that was came up in the Q&A, but I've dismissed that question now.
oh, okay.
That's fine. We can
Oh,
keep.
okay.
Yeah, that's good. It was in the
I'm just
Q&A.
going to write a note to myself so that I will later I'll do like a YouTube video or a YouTube live showing different options of that.
I'll
So whoever asked the
send you the
question, thank
transcript.
you.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you can see all the questions that we got.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Cool. Okay, well, let's go through a couple of these since you've got the spreadsheet. And
Mhm.
some of them you might like, and some of them you might not, because they're not like this one is not going to fit everybody's workplace, and that's okay. I just want to show you how to make these. All right, so I've got the answer key on the left with a very light level of instructions, just kind of some keywords. But if you want, like this Excel file is yours, you type in it if you need more instructions. But you can click on these cells and see some simple formulas behind the scenes too. But we're going to practice over here. Okay.
Yeah.
So one super quick win is little tallies where I just use the repeat function equals REPT. And then I'm repeating typically the pipe, the tall line, the pipe, which is in between, on my keyboard, it's in between backspace and enter. And
Mm-hmm.
it gets the double quotes around it because it's like something I'm typing in. It's not a cell reference. And then I'm repeating it that many times. And it takes like that long to get a quick tally.
Kind of like a sparkline, isn't it? Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, like a little quick viz that just lives inside the cell. If you have a big number, it's not going to work. Okay, so it only works for small numbers. Circles are so popular with the non-technical people. They eat these up. They love these.
Mhm.
The technical term in the data viz community would be an icon stack, not just an icon array, an icon stack. It's like a bar chart made out of circles. Super helpful for small numbers. Maybe if these were millions, like in whole numbers or billions of dollars, maybe it could work, but I don't think this one's going to work for your data sets. I just want to show you how to make it. It is good old repeat again, but instead of repeating the pipe, we're doing a lowercase n, repeating it this many times. And then the n turns into a symbol font, Webdings. And that's how you get a quick circle. These are the types of circles I do for like over under things, like um, minus 40%. And then this one was like increase of 50 and minus 10, whatever, increase of 20. I'll just do an if statement to say like if this, well, you could also add on conditional formatting to make them red or green. It gets really busy though. Let me just do the simple way. Okay, imagine all these ends in Webdings. And then this is what not to do. I just don't want to have to do like conditional formatting linked on the fly really quick. Let's pretend in this case that an increase is good. So then this one is like bad. That one's bad. This at a glance, it doesn't necessarily like pass a squint test. It's not very skimmable. And especially if you had a much longer column, it's just not as skimmable being two colors. The goal would be one color. Like, let me show you the difference. Like this one, the title, don't do this till the very end. I hate merging too, but like the label is basically like the change, the difference, where this one might be like, if it increased, you just focus on one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Or you turn it into more of like a binary situation, or you just focus on the decreases. But you'd write an if statement to give you the ends based on whether it was an increase or decrease.
Mm-hmm.
I would also do a conditional formatting to make
Got it.
this bold and red as well. So
Okay.
like this whole thing's
Yeah.
red. So it really stands out at a glance.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see the difference? Like
Mm.
if somebody says like, oh, I want little indicator dots in our dashboard or scorecard, I take that and I say, cool, like here's idea one. Here's idea two. We just focus on the increases. Or
Mm.
here's idea three, we just focus on the decreases.
Mm.
This one is not colorblind friendly and it's not grayscale friendly. So for a lot of the groups I with, they typically are actually printing out PDF packets and bringing them to big board meetings and talking about them. And I'll say, oh, like, you know how this is going in that board packet and it's always photocopied and it's printed out in grayscale? In gray, these are just going to look like they're just all going to look gray. So like we have to pick one of these since it's going to be printed out in grayscale. So sometimes that helps them kind of like, and if they pick the original, fine, like whatever. Like I don't lose sleep over it. It is their choice. So
Mm. Yeah, or Neil saying emojis work quite well here as well, or icons, or that there's 100 different
yeah.
ways of doing this. Mm.
Okay.
Cool.
Filled squares are the Webdings lowercase g.
Hmm.
You can't read this because it's written in Webdings, but if you do like a G with a space, it adds a little spacing behind it. If you do a G just like smush, then they kind of just look like a bar chart.
Yeah,
It just, it depends which one you want, but these are an option.
yeah, bar chart.
Sometimes I'll do the outline squares.
Yeah.
That's a lowercase c. The symbol fonts, I would say like they can do so much. There's Webdings. Now, a lot of them are very busy though. Like
Mm.
I don't even know if you can see. They look like this little spider web chicken scratch. They're very, very busy. Probably the best ones are the N, the G, and the C.
Hmm.
There's also wingdings. There is also one called, you have to download this one though. It's not a native font. There's We People that gives you miniature people,
Adorable.
which is like a really nice win. In the United States, we have, well, anybody can download this, but there's a font called State Face that gives you each letter corresponds to a state.
Oh.
So there's lots of symbol fonts that are available for free on the internet, but good old Webdings can do a lot for us.
Mhm.
All right, let me know in the chat who's familiar with data bars. They're under the conditional formatting menu. Are
Yeah.
these brand new to you? Do you already know the ins and
No, I
outs of
think most
them?
people are familiar with that. Maybe just it's just
Okay.
yeah, conditional.
So data bars, I would just say make sure they don't go on top of the numbers
Yeah.
because I wouldn't use the
Yeah.
gradient fill either because the gradient fill, the
Mm,
tail is the
mm,
most important part that we have to compare the lengths of the bars. So if I could wave my magic wand and change the default settings, I would get rid of the gradient fills. I would only use the solid fill, but not on top of the cells. I used to do this. I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to just make the numbers left aligned, but then it would just like look all messy. So that's why I do them off to the side.
yeah.
Okay. So
You
you
can
all
just
know this is just like the easiest formula in the world equals the value next door.
yeah.
Sometimes this magic trick, if you're not a data person, people are like, what? I didn't know I could even link to a cell like that. It's like they're just sitting next door.
And then
Um,
if you made it white font or something, or like remove.
yeah. It's this button. So when you add the data bars, really messy,
Yeah. Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
It should really just take this long. You do the little equals sign, you make a twin column, you add the data bars, you
Uh-huh.
go back and you manage rules,
And then
and it's
yeah.
this thing,
Okay.
show bar only. And this
Right.
is where I'm also choosing a brand color while I'm in there too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you don't have to go with the standard. You've chosen some nice colors which look good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For percentages, I often add some gray shading behind, which is
It's good.
literally the paint can.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
beautiful.
But then adding white outlines, not this one.
Mm,
This looks like 1995 Windows and
mhm,
PCs, not the black ones. This also, it messes up the pre-attentive attributes, right? Like our brains are drawn to darker colors
mhm,
first. So
mhm.
the black is competing with the brand purple for attention. So we want white outlines, the same color as the background. And I will tell you, if you're ever printing this, you need to use the thick one. So I do thick, white inside.
Inside.
So
Yeah.
just as like a little bit, oops, I have black around the outside too, but okay, all
Yeah.
around. Heat tables is what we call them in data viz. Excel calls them color scales. It's
Mhm.
just these, where you highlight the values, conditional formatting. And again, like don't use any of these because if you're colorblind, they all look like yellow. So ignore the whole top row. I would also say ignore any that have two colors because if somebody prints this, they're all just going to look gray and they won't be able to tell which one's blue, which one's red. I
Mm,
would only use the one color scale right here. That's the only one that's like guaranteed to be legible.
and then just change.
Then You change it because I used you run into some like color contrast issues or like see this one, can't you eyeball it and kind of see like
Mm.
the black numbers are just like a little bit too hard to read against that green. And when you do official color contrast tests, you'll see that, yeah, like your gut instinct was correct. It was too hard. It doesn't actually pass accessibility guidelines. Um, so, yes, you could do conditional formatting to automatically turn some of those fonts white. But then you have a mix of black and white font, which I think looks a little messy and distracting. So, what I usually do is I go into Manage. And instead of picking like some Excel random green, I would pick like my brand green, for example. But instead of the true brand colors, I'm typically picking a lighter version. I'll show you like blue. Like you dull them out a little bit. Otherwise, they get so colorful if it's just like dark, dark, dark everywhere. So you can adjust, the starting point, the ending point. I typically do white outlines between the cells just so that you can kind of see them apart a little bit better. Derek, the color contrast test is webaim.org. All right, those are all good for just one point in time, which when does that ever happen for financial stuff? Like not that often, right? That would be if you're just running this month's numbers or just this quarter's. But a lot of times in my work, I have an exactly to situation, like last year July versus this year July, or last fiscal year versus this fiscal year, or um, budgeted versus actual. That's in the exactly to family. Or I do a lot of like budgeted versus actual things. So sparklines, you've probably all seen, they've been around since 2018, 2019. They work okay for 2 points in time. I don't love them though. Sometimes people don't know what they're looking at. I'll ask them, I'm like, do you know what this means? Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, I've got 20 other options to show you. And they're like, what are these lines? Like, I don't know how to read this. So usually I go with spark lines if there's many, many more patterns in time. When you kind of get that variation, that's when they tend to be like, people compliment them more. So yes, they're possible, but I'm not a fan of them here. I'm not such a fan of the column charts because people, again, like they don't even know what they're looking at. And the columns usually need a lot more height to be, to see anything there. So like, yes, these are possible, but sometimes I'll even show people that as an option and we just look at it together. I'm like, I don't really like that one. And they're like, I don't either. And it's like, I'm giving them permission to say that like something's not helpful. So that I'm getting just better feedback from them. You all have probably seen these, the win-loss columns. They're in the Sparkline family. That's if you have a mix of positive and negative numbers, like percent changes or percentage point changes. Sort of helpful, not really. I love these when there's more columns, more points in time is when people tend to understand them better.
Mm.
And I love deviation bars. I've
Yeah,
had a lot of luck with those.
yeah, nice. Yeah, that looks good. So that's the just a data bar, isn't it? Mm.
It is, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's just a good old like subtraction,
Yeah,
or if
really
you're doing
simple.
percent point, changes or something, you could do some little formula in there.
Yeah.
And then you put data bars on top and you go into manage rules and you can adjust the min and the max, like the
Mhm.
behind the scenes scale, which usually I have like a helper cell someplace else that's deciding what the min and the max axis are. It's just the gray shading over the top, which is like the good old paint can. It's the thick white borders in between, and it's just an if statement deciding on whether the label appears on the left or right. So it's all just like techniques that I think you all can do in your sleep, just kind of combined maybe in new ways that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. People really like this one because look, it has like more size to the bars
Mm.
versus like this one. There's not enough size for you to really see a difference, I don't think. Check boxes, I think I got access to them last fall. Some other people might have been in like a beta testing program, or Danielle, maybe you got them
Yeah,
earlier than that.
Yeah, some people still don't have it, but if you're on 365, most people should have it by now. But yeah, it's been a bit slow coming out.
Well, if you don't have them, I would not worry because remember how you make squares? You
Hmm.
just use Webdings. So
Okay.
this is what I did for a decade before this one came out. And because I'm often making spreadsheets that I'm going to share with other people, and they're on like, I work with people who are on Excel 2010. Like they don't have sparklines, they don't have like a lot of graphs, they don't have a lot of stuff. So I'm like, let's use Webdings because I know that's been in there since the 90s. Like as long as I've been using a computer, I know Webdings has always been in there. So
Mm.
these are just well, you have to look up here. These are just if statements with lowercase g's and lowercase c's. That's it. And it gives the checkbox appearance. And it's so intuitive. People always understand. I've never had anybody not understand. They know like filled is yes and empty is no. It's like super, super obvious and simple to them. Sometimes I'll do circles, kind of like the red green example I showed you. Sometimes I'll do like a dark light variation. You
Good.
can make all this happen with if statements and conditional formatting too. All right. I love sparklines for many, many points in time, like
Mm,
4 or
yeah, for
12,
a trend.
a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get a little bit more interesting then. And then this last family, I actually use these a lot in my work
Yeah.
because I work on things like our public health agencies here, they have like healthy people 2020 or healthy people 2030. And there's all these goals for like, we're going to reduce HIV cases by this much, or we're going to improve child development outcomes. And this, it's like all these goals that they have at the big, like national level. So sometimes I'll use checkboxes here. I mean, the old school way of doing this, usually the draft of the table looks something like that. It's words. And I'm like, great, like let's change it into pictures because obviously if you look at this at a glance, people's eyes instantly go to the checkboxes because they just look amazing. And if they
Yeah.
don't have the checkboxes, I'm just using Webdings, G's, C's, N's,
Mm,
or deviation bars, super helpful there. Or these are just data bars, and these are also data bars,
yeah,
just
that's really
spilling over
effective.
into a
Yeah,
couple
totally.
columns.
That's very effective. Cool. Yeah, that bottom one I haven't seen done like that. That's really cool.
Well,
We're pretty
sometimes I work
much
with groups that, they'll set some goal like before a project has even started. Like they don't know like how many HIV cases can we actually reduce? Like they're making their best
mm,
professional judgment based on like all the smartest PhDs in the world are in the room guessing. But it's still an estimate. So sometimes they do go like way over. I have that happen in a lot of cases.
yeah,
Um, and I'll see people do like a donut chart sometimes
yeah.
that it's colored in 100%, and then the words will just say like 240%. It's like, but that visual doesn't match. Like you need to show that it's going over. It's like spilling over into multiple columns.
Yeah.
I think so.
We are pretty much at time, Anne. We're going to have to leave it here there. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to pop your link to your courses in again because I know you've got a free course in there and lots of other things for people to check out. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. And yeah, be sure to follow Anne. I will send through all of the questions and the comments to you, and I'll send out the recording together with the file for anyone who had trouble downloading it today. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anne. Was there anything you wanted to mention before we head off?
Thanks for joining us. Find me on LinkedIn. We can definitely connect there and stay in touch.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Anne, and we'll see everyone soon.